When our guest Alicia Abella joined Novo Nordisk, she inherited exactly zero AI infrastructure. I'm talking no strategy, no project tracking, no ROI metrics. Facing that proverbial blank page is what was happening. In under a year, Alicia built the entire internal structure from scratch. She created an AI roadmap, designed a way to measure returns, launched an AI champion program, and that program's already making an impact. This is how you build for ROI when you're starting from nothing. So we are going to have Greg back on stage just because he looks so good to chat with Alicia about how she did it. Welcome, Alicia and Greg. Take us away.
Thank you, Alicia. Great to see you again. So when you turned up, how much AI was already going on, Alicia, at Novo Nordisk? Like, what was happening? What was the situation that you inherited, if you will?
Yeah. So thank you first and foremost to you, Greg, and the organization for having me here today and giving me this opportunity. I also want to give a special shout out to Eric Borges for actually introducing me to you and this organization, and he'll be up a little later today. So by way of just quick introduction. As Maxwell said, I joined Novo Nordisk a little under a year ago, and I joined at a time when the organization, specifically Novo Nordisk US operations, right? Because we've got Novo Nordisk Global in Denmark, and then we've got the US operations, which is where I work out of, was standing up and transforming and creating an organization that was around commercial excellence and innovation. And so I was brought in as the AI product lead who was going to bring new AI opportunities to the business, to figure out where were there opportunities to bring AI to solve some of the business imperatives that the company had. It was initially just focused on marketing and sales, but I have since expanded to the entire enterprise. And one of the things that I first did when I joined was to go on a listening tour. So I went and I started talking to the leaders across the business, whether that was marketing, the sales leadership, IT leadership, legal, compliance. I wanted to sort of get a sense of the maturity of AI. How were people feeling about embracing it, using it? Where were they using it already today? What kinds of technologies did we have available today in order to just kind of assess the maturity and acceptance of these tools? And I guess I was a little bit maybe surprised to find out that the adoption and maturity level wasn't at the level maybe that I was expecting, but maybe I was expecting too much because I came from Google before joining Novo Nordisk. And before that, I was always in technology, managing researchers and technologists. And now I'm here in a pharmaceutical industry, which is a completely new industry for me. And it's highly regulated and it's conservative. And so maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but that was sort of how I went about kind of just setting the baseline and then realizing that, oh gosh,
Hold on a second, Alicia. How long did that take, that listening tour and sort of baseline assessment? How long did that take, approximately?
Yeah, it was approximately probably 3 months of effort.
All right. Yeah. And did you discover sort of high levels of interest, but it's hard, or you discovered resistance, or like what was just the lay of the land again?
No, that's a great question, Greg. There was fear, there was uncertainty, there was even lack of understanding and even knowing that where to find. We have our own internal Novo Nordisk ChatGPT, and people didn't even know where to find it, for example, right? There were people who were using it, but then there were others who didn't know it. There was fear. And I think the fear stems again from the nature of the industry, because they're afraid of how to use it, right? They are afraid of, well, can I upload this document? I'm not sure if it's confidential. Is it going to go outside into the public internet? Does it stay inside? And so, all of that was what led me to do, well, multiple things. But one of the things that I did do was to create this AI ambassador program. So there were people, Greg, that were AI enthusiasts, and they really wanted to learn more about it, and they wanted to get involved, and they want to be at the forefront. And so I assembled this team of, there must be now more than probably 3 dozen AI ambassadors across USO that are my like flywheel across the organization, because I can only do so much. So I kind of train them, I talk to them, we have, great conversations, lunch and learns, I bring external speakers in, they go and they spread the word. And then the other thing I did was to stand up a SharePoint site where I co-author every other week a blog about AI, something that's going on in the industry, an AI trend, something I think the employee base should know about and be educated on. And again, the whole premise is to get the resistance to come down, get the fear to go away so that they can hopefully adopt AI and learn how to use it.
Back to those ambassadors. So what's in it for them? Like, did you have to, do they get, they're obviously not paid anymore or anything like that. They get sort of reputational, I guess, value, or like how did you sell it to them to be an ambassador?
Yeah. Well, so that's a great question too, Greg. So I did, I sold it on various levels. One was the networking opportunity, right? To be able to learn and network with their peers. The other one was the speakers, the special speakers that I would bring in so that they would learn about what was going on at the latest and greatest of AI, learning about how they could use AI for their own work. Again, these are AI enthusiasts, people who want to use AI but aren't sure how to use it. And so that's also how I sold it. I said, you come here, we can, you can learn more about how you can use AI in your everyday work. And yeah, I think feeding them also helps. So I always bring food, right? So we have it usually at lunchtime.
This is the key to closing the AI ROI gap. It's basically lunch.
Yeah, you got to feed them.
Okay. Yeah. Has that group turned over? Like, do you bring on new and like do people sort of move on or
So it's still relatively new. So we've got the same group of people, but actually as word goes out about it, I do have more folks asking me to join. When I started the program, I started with a low number of people. I said, well, if I can get 5 people by the end of the first quarter, I'd be happy. Well, I had almost 3 dozen by the end of the first quarter. So there's obviously an appetite for it. Yeah.
When you think about sort of percentage of the workforce that you need to be ambassadors, like do you have a number in mind? Like, is it 5% or like when you think about how much change you have to affect, do you have a sense of how many of those ambassadors or influencers you need?
I didn't do a calculation or quantify it in that way. I really was looking at it more as something that should come organically, and then we'll take it from there. But I think,
Alicia, just for the audience, how many U.S. employees is this covering? Like, what's the size of the organization?
Yeah, probably not something I could share publicly, but it's a couple thousand, right?
Okay, all right,
yeah,
great.
A couple thousand.
Okay. And they have access to what kind of AIs? Like, what's the typical? What's the sort of AI toolkit look like for a typical employee?
Yeah, so for a typical employee, they have access to Copilot, so Microsoft's Copilot. Within that Novo Nordisk ChatGPT that I mentioned, we have access to various models that they could try. So we've got the OpenAI, but we also have Gemini. We have the various different image generation models and Claude, and so they have access to that. Although even that, we've got to teach them how to actually pull down the menu and pick from all those different models.
Yeah, sure. I mean, same for OpenAI, right? Because that's what GPT-5 was all about, just fixing the model picker, because most people can't figure it out.
And then there are tools that we're developing and building. So that's sort of my role, right? We're building more sort of complex, both traditional AI technologies, but also Gen AI products for the workforce. So there's those that they have available as well. But we're only just starting now to deploy pilots in that area.
Yeah, I'd like to get to that later, but I just want to stay for a moment with sort of these general purpose AI tools. And you talked about lowering anxiety. So what's the mindset of the executive team there in terms of, are they encouraging AI usage? So what's the manifesto for AI for the organization?
Yeah, well, so it's, again, I joined in November. I was not seeing a global nor a local AI strategy per se. That's starting to change now. So there is now at the global level an initiative to put together an AI strategy that's coming from the top, but it is being developed and built grassroots by the folks that are actually building the technologies and using the technologies. So I'm involved in that.
Yep.
There are sort of two different venues. There's the global strategy, and then there's the USO one, because we are in the US kind of a little bit unique and a little bit different as the largest affiliate of Novo Nordisk for obvious reasons. So we do things a little bit independently, but for the strategy, we're trying to combine those two. So it's only recently that we're kind of seeing some of that top-down support for it. Honestly, I think we can do better in terms of really advertising it and getting folks to use it. We have a new CEO that has been talking about embracing and using AI more. And on the drug discovery side, there's a lot of activity and utilization of AI for drug discovery. I'm in the commercialization side of the house. And so there's where I see less of that adoption and utilization. So we got to keep in mind that there's a lot of different business functions within Novo Nordisk.
I forgot to ask you, but I think it's relevant for the audience. What part of the org are you? You're in the commercialization side.
Yes.
Are you in IT though, or are you in the tech side of the shop, or HR? Like where are you?
No, I'm in the tech side of the house.
Okay.
So I am in the data and analytics organization. So we have the data scientists, the data engineers, the AI product and program managers within our shop. We do research and work on traditional AI machine learning for the commercial, commercial business. So the marketing, sales teams, and then we also do Gen AI work, which is mostly where I'm really working in, is in the Gen AI piece.
One last question on this, then we'll move on to sort of more of those specialized AI applications and projects. Do you have any goals for adoption and usage when you think about, what success looks like in a year for that sort of everyday general purpose AI use, or is it too early still for you guys?
Yeah, so I don't have the adoption numbers for our general purpose tools. What I am doing now, though, is having an adoption plan for the more sophisticated AI products that we're developing, because an adoption plan is absolutely key. Right? If you ask me what you need to do, that is where a lot of focus should be, because you can develop the best Gen AI solution, but if you don't have an adoption plan, you can't have change management there. It's just not going to be used. And so I have started to do that. And in fact, an adoption plan is one of those things one of those elements that I brought into the organization as something that needs to be highlighted and not underestimated. So that's one of several elements that I've brought in, besides the ambassadors, besides the blog with the AI education. It's the adoption plan. And
what's in that? Yeah, let's talk more about it. What's in that plan? What are the components of that plan? And is it a 1-year plan, 2 or 3 years? Like, just give us a sense of how robust that plan needs to be. What's your recommendation?
Yeah. So my recommendation is it has to live as long as the product lives. So you start off with building out, things like the FAQs, like documentation, what the communication plan is for the tool to the end users. You have to plan out a marketing campaign. This is like no different than if I was launching, the iPhone as a product, right? You have to constantly be marketing it. I create posters that I put up around the building. We're going to be showcasing videos on the digital TVs that are in the building. I invite myself to senior leadership's town halls where I can advertise the tool and the capabilities. And you just have to keep that drumbeat going, because if you don't, it'll get forgotten, or it might not get the utilization and the number of users you would want. And the tool does evolve and it changes, and you add features to it. So every time you do that, you have to again go back and refine the adoption plan, and you have to create again that marketing campaign, and you have to constantly have that buzz. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I want to create T-shirts.
Sure, but Alicia, why don't you just mandate it? Like what it sounds like you're doing a lot of like carrots, right? Well, how about the stick?
Mhm.
Like why don't we just say, hey, if you're going to be in this job, you got to use this AI tool or not? Just
Yeah,
what
well,
are your thoughts there about the balance of those two approaches?
yeah, no, it's a good question, and the reason why we're not mandating it is the culture within Novo Nordisk, right? I mean, we have a culture that we call kind of the Novo way, and sometimes people might refer to it affectionately as Novo Nice. And so the idea of mandating the utility of it just does not fit with the culture.
Yep.
And so you have to work around making sure that we're working within the culture of the company.
No, I get it. I'm Canadian, so I understand nice. Um, you know, although we are hearing of companies, right? The obvious one is Shopify
Yes.
embedding, at least that's what they've said they're doing, AI proficiency in the annual performance review. What do you think of that kind of idea?
What do I think of that idea? Again, I think it's I don't know. I think I've always been more of more in the camp of, if the tool and the technology you're giving to the people helps solve a problem for them and they start to experiment with it, I'd rather encourage them to
Right,
experiment with it and
right.
use
And
it
then,
and realize themselves that, oh
right,
my gosh, I can't believe it's taking me this long to use this. I can't, like now I can't live without it, right? It should
right. So
become like
basically, yeah,
air.
make the product hook them, basically, right? Like
Yeah,
make a great product, right? Make a
yeah,
great solution.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
All
That's
right,
kind of my philosophy.
all right, let's switch to these projects you've been referring to a couple times. Let's talk first about the kind of approval process or vetting process. How do you vet some of these ideas, and what are what are the metrics for vetting them?
Yeah. So I would say, so I'll focus in maybe on three kind of criterias that we look at, and maybe even three ROI checkpoints that we look at. So in terms of when somebody comes with an AI idea, the three checkpoints are: is there strategic alignment? So, does the idea directly support a business objective? So that's sort of number one. Number two, the regulatory and compliance feasibility of the idea. Because again, highly regulated industry, we got to make sure that the AI solution can be implemented within the legal and regulatory frameworks that we have to operate within. And then there's the technical feasibility. So can this be built, and this technology built into the existing systems that we have internally, because everything is kind of gardened off, right? There's a walled garden, everything has to be on-prem. So can it do that? So those are sort of three criteria checkpoints. There has to be, a strong business case that aligns to the business strategy as a whole. And then
Yep.
the business case also has to take into consideration those unique industry concerns like compliance and data
Yep.
privacy and all
And
that.
is this a document or a deck? I'm just getting tactical here, but I think the tactics, the audience is interested. Like, is this sort of a monthly meeting and people are presenting these different ideas, or this is sort of someone submits it and you take a look at it? Like, how you
Yeah.
manage this?
Yeah. So I'll address. There's like two questions in there, I think, that I'll address. So the first one actually talks about one of those elements that I brought in over the last year, and I did this with the support of a large team within the company, and that was a data and AI use case intake process. So working with legal, compliance, IT, myself with from the AI side, we developed a process where these ideas can be put in, and then there are a group of what we call collaborators, right? Myself being one, and a representative from each of those groups I just described, that evaluate those ideas and decide whether they should actually be approved. Now, at that point, we are assuming that a business case has already been developed and approved, and there's money and investment to be made into that project. So what we're doing is making sure that it satisfies that legal regulatory framework, any IT
Yep.
requirements that need to be right. So that was before there was like multiple processes to do this. Nobody had an inventory, really one single centralized inventory of what all the AI projects were. There was silos of AI projects going on everywhere. And so that was the purpose of that. And so the other element that I brought in, which gets to the question of the tactics that you asked about, which is I introduced this notion, which seems very simple, but it's a one-page template that anytime we have a project or a product that we're trying to develop, it's a one-pager. You've got various pieces of information on there. It is who's the program sponsor? What is the problem statement? What is the business objective that we're trying to achieve? What is in scope? What is out of scope for the project? Who are the leads? What is the investment? What is the ROI? And it all fits on one page. That page is socialized with all of our stakeholders, as well as our functional team members, everybody who's building this. And that sounds simple, but that didn't exist before. But that program and project charter becomes the North Star. So that is what we all get aligned to.
Yeah, and that, let's talk about the ROI that's in that, the expected ROI that's in that document. Is it, how specific is it? Is it vague and high level, or are you really asking people to forecast, you know, productivity savings or headcount savings, or, you know, whatever it is? Talk about the ROI, the expected ROI in these projects.
Yeah. So we're not expecting them to go too deep on the details of the ROI. They're still kind of high level at the, you know, cost savings in terms of time savings, or maybe acceleration in terms of time to market. But, you know, I would say that muscle is still being developed for folks in terms of how best to do it. You know, I was on the call earlier when you would put the poll up about where we were, and I exactly would have picked B, which was the one about we're kind of there, but we don't know really how to calculate it exactly. So I think that's where we are too. And so we're doing our best effort, right, in terms of what the ROI should look like. But
who goes back and checks on that ROI? Like, you know, when you think about one of these projects and you push it into pilot and then maybe from pilot to production, like, is anybody going back in 6 or 9 or 12 months and saying, you know, did this actually achieve what it was supposed to achieve? And
so that is my expectation. And the reason why I'm saying that's my expectation is because we haven't actually done it yet, right? This is a brand new, right? It's a brand new process, brand new thing that I've been introducing, right? Is this discipline around doing this, right? So, so with that being said, what I want to implement is to have what I would call a pilot ROIs, because a lot of what we're doing right now in the projects I'm involved in are still in the pilot phase. So I have a pilot ROI. So again, let's just see, what is the investment needed for this pilot? What do we think the expected gain is for this pilot? And then if we are successful and we demonstrate that, in fact, it met the expected gain, then we move on to the next stage, which is sort of the scaled ROI. So now we're at a stage where now we want to scale the pilot. Well, we got to recalculate the ROI, in my opinion. Right? Now you have to say, okay, well, how much are we going to invest now? What's the expected gain now that we've scaled? And at that point, the additional thing you have to do is to look at that particular investment against other investments that you're also doing, right? And then, because then you, at some point, you're going to have to prioritize, and some things will get invested in and others won't. And then you will have a third one, to your point, post-implementation return on investment. So you do have to constantly be going back and assessing whether the expected gain is still, you're still getting the return on the investment, right, over time. But we're still early days there.
Yeah, Alicia, let's talk about some of these projects more specifically, because you talked about you've greenlit some pilots recently. Just talk about a few of them, and you know, not in the way that's you can't talk about, but you know, sort of, are they sort of about are they making salespeople more efficient or marketers more, you know, productive, or just give us an idea of the kinds of things that are meeting your initial screens?
Yeah, happy to. So I would say right now there are 2 flavors or themes with our projects. One is around what I would call your knowledge search use cases. So how do we make our internal teams and especially say our market researchers more efficient and more effective? Like many other companies, we are drowning in data, drowning in reports, PowerPoints, Excels, right? And so the market researchers within our organization have a big job in terms of having to sift through so much data in order to be able to answer questions they are getting from the marketing teams, from senior leadership, things that could take days, literally days to sift through. Now with tools like the AI tools we're developing for them, it can now take minutes. But even more than just finding the needle in the haystack, which we can do now more easily with AI, it's also about being able to surface new insights that they couldn't do before, right? Because they were too busy trying to just find the information. Now we can use AI to actually help them derive new insights, help them augment their capabilities, get rid of the mundane task of finding it, and now actually focus in on the insights piece of it. And so that in itself is a return on investment that, you know, we can quantify in terms of days that we've saved for them. But a less tangible one is one around the fact that now they can start to think about the data differently and probably better, and so do their job and have an impact better. So that's sort of one area, one theme. The second one is for, you know, the marketing organization to help them generate content more quickly that they can put out into the market, and do it in a more personalized way. So again, everything hinges on the data. So if we have data to help us understand what our end consumers are looking for, we can personalize messages, whether that message is for the healthcare providers or the patients directly. We are looking at ways to use generative AI to create that personalized messaging, but also use it to be able to create content that is compliant right from the get-go, so that we can get through the process of, you know, medical, legal, and regulatory review much more quickly, because the AI has already kind of done it in a compliant manner. So we're speeding up also that process at the tail end, which can take a long time, that approval process to put any content into the market. So those are sort of two themes.
Great. Okay, listen, we need to start to wrap up. Alicia, I'd like you to give some parting advice. Think about it as, well, yeah, just parting advice to anyone who's coming into a situation where there's a lot of AI chaos and a lot of good intentions and lots of activity and maybe inflated expectations as well. But what would be your sort of, you know, one or two parting words for the audience?
Okay. So I'll give you, 2 or 3. So the first thing is to focus on the business problem and not the technology. So instead of asking, where can we use AI? It's about what are our biggest business problems and can AI help us to solve it? That would be one. The second one I would say would be, don't treat AI as an IT project. Right? AI is a strategic business capability, not a technology rollout. So that would be my second one. And the third one is, I think I mentioned it already, but I'll mention it again. Don't underestimate the need for change management. Because you can create the best AI tool and nobody will use it if you don't have a good adoption plan and a change management plan.
All right. One last question. In 3 to 5 years, what's your prediction in terms of how much work has changed based on what you've seen so far in terms of your organization?
3 to 5 years. I would say that definitely, you know, I would hope that within 3 years, I would see every single individual within Novo Nordisk US using AI at least 3 or 4 times a day.
Great. Okay. So that's your change management goal.
That's right.
Love it. All right. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Greg.